All right, welcome back to our new podcast series, The 20-Minute Investor, where my partner Nathan and I bring you actionable nuggets and insights from our real estate investing journeys in bite-sized 20-minute episodes. I'm Aaron Amin. My wife and I built a portfolio of 8 cash-flowing rentals across 3 states while working full-time and raising a young family.
And I'm Nathan, a husband, father, and tech executive who built a portfolio of cash-flowing properties across 2 states more than 2,000 miles away.
Together, we co-founded the Remote Real Estate Academy, where we coach investors on how to build their own portfolio of cash-flowing rentals from anywhere in the world. All right, so this week's topic is also coming from our community. And a lot of times people are encouraged to share content, what we're doing right now, but they're wondering, like, how can I feel like I have the credibility? Maybe they don't feel like they have something to share that could be valuable to others, also known as imposter syndrome, right? So topic of the week is going to be how we have battled that in our own journeys and why investors should feel good about what they have to share and how it might affect others. So you want to get started? What's been your journey with imposter syndrome?
I'm in the middle of it all the time for all the things. I think that's my journey. It's a lifelong journey. But actually, yeah, no joking aside, I think that's very true, at least for me. I'll speak for myself. But yeah, very true, where in many aspects of my life, whether it be being a good husband, being a good father, being the tech executive, like I mentioned in the intro, right? And real estate, right? But there are always times in my regular day, regular week where I question myself. Am I doing the right thing? Do I know what I'm talking about? Should I be doing this? Why am I doing this? And it happens all the time. And I think it's a normal thing, in my opinion, but also the way I try to look at it to turn that imposter syndrome into a positive versus a negative is to keep reminding myself that if and when I feel that, and if and when I feel those feelings, it's probably because I'm pushing myself to grow, pushing myself to be in a space that I am not an expert in. So I'm pushing myself where I'm growing, because you can't both grow and be the expert, right? I think by definition, if you're growing and learning and trying and doing something new, it's obviously by definition new. So there's going to be aspects of that where you're like, why am I doing this? Am I really skilled to do this? And you have those questions that come up, but I think it's part of the journey, like I said. And it's not something that I would say I'm comfortable with. When I have those feelings, I have to check myself and get back into the positive mode to be like, no, but this is growth. This is good. You should be okay with this, but when it happens, it still happens, right? And you have to be ready to deal with it. How about you? What's your story? You're all good, right? No
Totally
imposter
solved,
syndrome ever.
cured.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
No, I think the way you led with that too, right, is that we're always in the middle of it. It's so true. And I am constant, even though I'm now recording and releasing and writing content more than I ever have in my life, I still feel like I'm doing it from a place of sharing, not from enforcing or trying to speak down in any way or try and portray that I have some authoritative, right? I feel like it's more about sharing perspective in the hopes that it might resonate with people who are going through similar challenges. And to your point too, it's usually indicative of growth. If you're perfectly comfortable with what you're doing, you might not have imposter syndrome as much because you're comfortable.
Exactly.
So I view it as a sign of growth. And I think the scariest part for people is when they're sharing something. I actually had this conversation with my wife the other day. We're building this memory care mansion. It's this big project that's way bigger than anything we've ever done before. And there's 1,000 things that could go wrong. And she was talking about, well, we're sharing this stuff and like the whole thing could fall apart still. And wouldn't that be embarrassing? And for sure, it might be, I don't know about embarrassing, but it would be challenging to share it. We're building all this positive momentum and things are going great. And then if something falls apart, it feels like a failure and one that you might not be inclined to share with people. But I have found time and time again that the more that I share the actual challenges, the better of a connection I have anyway. It's when you try and start saying, this is how you should do it, or saying things like, with that authoritative stance, without tying it back to your own experience, that's when I think it's more of a, okay, maybe then it is a who do you think you are type thing. But that's why the storytelling vibe, I think that's how I have thought about sharing. And I do have one other thing that really helped me with imposter syndrome. I've been open about this, but I'm coming up on 6 years sober. And in the early days of that, I did a short stint in inpatient rehab. I went to meetings all the time. And in those early days, It's something like recovery where you're making this big, abrupt life change that's very serious, and it typically has implications far beyond whatever that day might hold. There's the weight of the world weighing on you. And what I learned in those rooms, though, is that the person with 2 days sobriety can help the person with 1. And it really is sometimes better for the person that is just coming into the room to talk to somebody that has 30 days or less that's going through that same process with them than it is to talk to somebody with 30 years where they can't necessarily relate to. So I think totally different context, but that taught me a thing or two about respecting the value of sharing things, even if you're only maybe 1 or 2 steps ahead of somebody in the journey. So that helped me a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it spot on. First of all, thanks for sharing that, because that's obviously very personal and sensitive or whatever. But yeah, I think what I've come to realize is everybody will always, in my opinion, and I'm probably wrong, but everybody will always have something to share with someone else somewhere, right? There's no 2 individuals who are the same on this planet, no 2 individuals who have the exact same story, and there's always going to be something of interest or something that one can learn from somebody else, right? And even though I think that the imposter syndrome thing is like, it's what you said earlier is, well, who am I? What do I have to share? Well, sure, you could look at it that way, but it's probably if you just tell your story, like you said, and not coming to preach or teach or anything like that. I'm just sharing my story. Somebody else will relate, right? Or find something interesting. And it's interesting because before you talked about the mansion and failure, embarrassment, and all that, it's all about perspective, right? Because you can look at a failure, let's say that project of yours and your wife's doesn't pan out, right? And it just doesn't work. Sure, you'll lose money probably. I don't know what else, embarrassed, you said. I don't know. One way to look at it is failures like that are also, or could be, or should be, in my opinion, learning opportunities. And as long as you're not doing the same mistake again, right? If you can learn from something when, quote, air quote here, fails, then it's not really a failure. It's a learning opportunity, right?
And even one step further to that, right? If you learned a lesson from that can then prevent you from making future mistakes, what a blessing it is to share that with other people
100%.
who might be coming up on that same decision point, and they don't have the perspective that you have because you just went through something that taught you that lesson. And so if you can share your story and maybe prevent somebody else or many other people from making that mistake, I mean, that's one of the reasons I think you and I like having the Academy so much, is because there's a lot of stuff that worked well for us. And yes, we do talk about that, but we also talk about the stuff that didn't work because our primary objective is to prevent other people from having to make those mistakes. That can shorten the timeline, and it can shorten the amount of time and energy they have to put into it because, hey, there's a little blind spot that I wouldn't have known about if I didn't hear about it. And so I think it's like shifting the frame from feeling like you're preaching to people versus, hey, I learned something useful and I'm sharing that in the hopes that you get some value out of it. And it's okay if you don't, because I'm also not forcing you to watch my content.
No, you can't. I mean, it's a good point, forcing you to watch the content, but it's also, I think related to that, it's also, you can't force somebody to listen, right, to anything. Even if you're sharing your story, whether they watch it or not, you don't know how they're going to hear that story and how they're going to interpret it and what they're going to do with it, right? So it is all about mindset at the end of the day. Yeah, imposter syndrome, fun.
Well, I think one area too where people can become more confident and maybe also be a little bit less out front, which sometimes is scary if you go post on Facebook or you go post on LinkedIn or you post on YouTube, that's quote unquote public. But, communities such as ours, such as Michael Zuber's, I know we're both a part of, there's other communities of real estate investors. And in those instances, the people that are paying to be part of those programs are going through stuff in the trenches, so to speak, together. And that's a great place to add value. That's a great place to go in. And if you see somebody tell a story, if you see somebody ask a question and you happen to know something that might be useful, just go in and answer, right? Like it's that go-giver philosophy. Like I don't necessarily get some amazing immediate transactional benefit from taking time out of my day to do that, but I feel good because I once faced similar situations. And by the way, I will probably still face those things again. And if I don't continually to remind myself of the lessons that I learned the last time, I'll probably forget and make the damn mistake again.
So true.
So, I mean, there's, you get a lot by giving a lot away. And that's how I have come to think of sharing things, especially publicly.
Yeah, one thing that I find very interesting, because we all of us are with other people all the time in all aspects of life, family, work, hobbies, real estate, whatever it is. We're obviously talking about real estate here, even though imposter syndrome can apply to, many aspects of one's life. But, and I'm curious what your thoughts are, but I've found, like, specifically like the real estate investing people, communities, whatever, I've still every day am amazed at how much of a giving, like, community people it is. It's insane. Like, when I started, I was like, why would another successful real estate investor talk to me about the markets that I'm in now? Because I might be stealing, air quotes again here, their next property and all that stuff. And I had all these weird feelings and sentiments. And I've come to realize it's people give so much. It's insane. So
Yeah.
if anything, like, there's so many ways to do real estate, so many markets, so many properties, so many unique situations, that if anything, I feel this space that we're talking about is maybe a prime space for imposter syndrome to not be a thing, because people are such go-givers. It's crazy.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think you find a lot of that interaction in communities. And I just started an in-person meetup, and I started going to more in-person meetups here in Houston. And that's not a space that I really participated in a lot. The last few years, I had 3 kids in 3 years, moved across the country a couple times. It just wasn't, the timing wasn't right for me to be spending evenings going out to those. But I'm also impressed and encouraged when I go to places like that. And I'm not there being like, let me tell you about everything I did and this is how you should do it. It's
Yeah.
no, I listen to what people are going through. And if there's something that they're faced with, that I happen to know something that might be useful, then I will try and share that from the sense of, hey, this might be useful to you. And I do think that some of it is also just getting some reps in, right? If you want to participate
100%.
in the conversation, then you have to practice doing that in different settings, whether it's in person or on a free Facebook group for the market that you invest in, or in one of these communities if you're a part of them. Just like the first few times you say something or tell your story, you're going to ask yourself that question, who the hell am I to do this? And that doesn't go away. Like Nathan said, he still feels that way. I still feel that way. But at a minimum, you start to see maybe some of the throughput to somebody. Like somebody might send you a nice message. I got a really nice message yesterday from something that I published 2 months ago. And the person was telling me how they heard my story on my podcast because they just happened across the episode and it helped them make a decision, right? And that's not me trying to feed my ego. That's like genuinely, I really feel grateful that they got something out of that hopefully helps them maybe avoid a bad situation or whatever it may be,
Yeah.
right? And I think the more you put yourself out there, the more opportunities you'll have for that little bit of validation that, hey, what you're doing is helping other people. It's not hurting them.
Yeah, 100%. Couldn't agree more.
So I know the other, I don't know, maybe angle I want to get your perspective on. The other, so the imposter syndrome, the mindset is one thing, but there's also the practicality of the time it takes and how natural it feels to be on stuff like social media. So like you and I have had a 1,000 behind the door conversations and
Yep.
shared a lot of information. You're you're a better example of someone who is really active in giving value in communities like that. But I know that social media isn't like the most comfortable space, right? So maybe I think
100%.
you're better equipped to share, like for those who are not inclined towards social media, like how do you think about other ways that you can contribute?
Yeah, it's a great question. To your point, I'm not a big social media guy, but I try. Oftentimes, I try to flip that script or that mindset to think about social media as a way to connect and interact with other people, ultimately meeting new people, right? And that's not an easy thing to do, because there's maybe this is my perception and it's wrong, probably, very likely, but there's aspects of social media where it's all about people just showing off, blasting, selling, pushing, marketing, whatever you want. That, yes, social media can be used for that and is used for that. But there's also the other aspect where I'm working from home most days. A lot of us are today. We're not in cities, in trains, in buses, in offices, and anything like that anymore. So you don't necessarily meet people as easily as before, maybe. So I try to look at it that way, whereas, yeah, social media is just a way of connecting with other people. And you know what? It makes it easier to connect with other people who have shared or similar interests, because you can go find a forum for this, a forum for that, a channel, group chat, whatever for this, pick your favorite topic, right? So maybe imposter syndrome, I don't know. I still don't feel comfortable on social media just because I'm not a put myself out there kind of guy, but I try to flip that script again and be like, well, actually, I want to network. We've talked about this multiple times in the past. Real estate, and I'd argue a lot of things in life, are a people business and endeavors, and you're only as successful as the group around you is. So, yeah, I don't know if that really answered your question, but
it does. And I also think it's like the overarching theme is like deep relationships, not necessarily going wide, trying to reach the entire internet. You can still, Nathan and I met in a small mastermind group within a community that we met every week for almost 2 years, right? Talk about like we build deep relationships, not only with each other, but the other 2 gentlemen that were in the group. And like I got more value out of having those conversations and the recurring touch points. And we were all doing different things in different markets, facing different bottlenecks. And even if I wasn't going through the same thing Nathan was going through that particular week, whatever he told me in January was going to come up for me in June. And like there were stuffs that come back around from conversations I had prior that influenced in a good way my experience. And so it's not always practical to meet some, group every week. You can't do that with 100 people or 1,000 people, but you can definitely build relationships with 10 to 20 investors that you're going to keep in regular touch with and support each other. And then as you want to, maybe one of your personal KPIs is you're going to meet one new investor in your market every month, every 2 weeks, whatever it is. Like you can set those little goals, but they don't actually depend on social media. They don't depend on social media other than maybe fishing through Facebook groups and seeing who's active and stuff like that. It does not require you actually posting on behalf of yourself unless that's something you really want to develop. So I think some people are looking for permission, like not to post. And you have that from me, not that my permission means anything, but I think the default assumption should not be that you need to go create an Instagram and start posting talking head videos every day. There are other ways to get to the
100%
the same depth. So
yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more on the commenting piece and not necessarily posting. I mean, especially like in life in general, but definitely in kind of the real estate space, some of my closest, let's say, real estate investing friends, partners, whatever, I met through social media. And not because I'm posting content that attract them, but because I just interacted with, I saw something or they commented on another post themselves, and they're not necessarily big producers of content. It was like, oh, I liked the way you answered this. And then a conversation starts, and all I did was comment on somebody else's comment, right? And then relationships start without needing to do that, in my opinion, perceived social media full-time job of posting, creating content. I need to provide value. I need to seem like this. I need to act like that. And you don't do any of that, and you still get a lot of value.
Yep. So hopefully imposter syndrome, social media, like what is the value of the activities you're doing, questioning the default assumptions. There's a way to have the appropriate level of confidence to where you're neither arrogant nor self-defeating. But a lot of it is about just finding the sweet spot for you and what resonates with you, and then leaning into those channels once you find them. So hopefully people got value out of this. We're coming right up on the 20-minute mark. So thanks again, everyone, and we'll catch you next week.
All right, take care, man.
Thank you for making it to the end of today's episode. As you may know, podcasts are very difficult to grow organically. If you're getting value from today's episode, I'd deeply appreciate if you can take 30 seconds to leave my show a 5-star rating and review. This will go a long way to helping me reach more listeners just like you. Thank you so much in advance.